I'm going to do one more because I would like to go home now. It's been a long day. And I'm going to go with this one because I think it's a great question. Um, Jason Rasmussen says Das Boot was one of the best submarine movies. Any other good and accurate ones? And then below that, immediately below that, here comes Dave Olson with a bunch of choices. Your favorite submarine movie, Run Silent, Run Deep? As it turns out, Run Silent, Run Deep was written by Captain Beach, who was the captain of the Triton who sailed around the world in Operation Sandblast. The Enemy Below, Das Boot, Hunt for Red October, Crimson Tide, or K-19 The Widowmaker. Now, to answer your question, John, best submarine movie. Das Boot is not only the best submarine movie ever made, Das Boot is one of the 3 best war movies ever made, and it's one of the 5 or 10 best movies ever made of any kind, period. Das Boot is an astonishingly great movie. It's phenomenal. It's the most expensive movie ever made in Germany, at least up until the time. Jürgen Prochnow got launched from that film. He's unbelievably good in it. And nothing captures life on a boat the way that Das Boot does. And furthermore, I think it does an excellent job, a really excellent job of humanizing the Kriegsmarine sailors that were on those boats. You know, these aren't SS guards at death camps. These are patriotic Germans fighting for their country. 39,000 of them went out, and something like 32,000 of them didn't come back. So you really get it. And the acts of heroism, if you really, of all the things on a submarine, and we talked about the Thresher and Scorpion and K-129 and all of it, if you haven't seen the movie, I don't think this is much of a spoiler, but if you have, I mean, the movie's 30 years old now or something, but if you have, I just bring this up. Of all the scenes in that movie that convey life on a conventional submarine, there's a scene at the end of the movie, near the end of the movie, where the U-boat is depth charged and they're resting on the bottom of the Mediterranean right by Straits of Gibraltar. And the battery's shorted out and they're running out of air, and they need that battery back online if they're going to get the electric engines to run and get back to the surface. And the way this thing is set up is that it's already like it's like a tomb inside the boat. It's so beautifully made that you can tell that everybody is just barely breathing, that it's dark and hot, and they all know they're going to die. And there's so much carbon dioxide in the air that nobody can keep their eyes open. They're just passing out, literally passing out from oxygen starvation and from carbon dioxide buildup. And then the engineer, the chief engineer of the boat, who's been working in the keel of the submarine underwater with goggles, taking a breath, going into this bilge basically with a screwdriver or with a wrench and reconnecting, rerouting the battery leads. You can just tell. I mean, I've been around people who are that exhausted, not on a German U-boat, but I've been around people that have been working for 2-3 days straight, and I've been one of them. And it's a miserable feeling when everybody's just completely blown. But you're sure everybody's just going to just simply die. And then this wraith of an engineer, this gaunt, bearded, living dead skeleton comes out from the engine room and basically turns to the captain, and he's been working on these engines for 30 hours or something, and he finally says, we got the engines online. And Jürgen Prochnow says, good. I forget what the character's name is. And it starts to get a little teary. He says, good. They pop up to the surface, and there's that tremendous scene where they go racing on the surface out of the Mediterranean through the Straits of Gibraltar, and he's, not today. It's fantastic. It's a great movie. Cannot recommend it highly enough. I think the second best sub movie I've seen, I haven't seen Hunter Killer. I haven't seen The Crew. I want to see that. Or is it The Command? I forget. The recent one about the Kursk. Hunt for Red October was just a little bit fabulous for me, I mean, the book is fantastic, but the movie, Red October, just looks a little science fiction-y for me. I think the only only movie ever to give Das Boot a run for the money in terms of its story and especially its accuracy is Crimson Tide. I've mentioned this several times before, but that won't stop me from doing it again. I'll just keep it brief and get out of here. Astronerd says, if you ever sit in the back of an old VW that had a bad battery, the choking fumes from the acid will give you a smidgen of an idea what they were breathing. Plus, exactly right, that battery acid stink, plus all of the diesel fumes that are coming up, all the gasoline fumes and the carbon monoxide, and it's filthy hot as sweat. You got 100 guys in this steel tube for months and 2 toilets, one, something. It's just two pings only, especially. But Crimson Tide, I'd known a fair amount about submarines by the time I went to see Crimson Tide, which is, again, 25 years old now, something like that. And once I got to sea, I said to myself, I don't know who wrote this, and I don't know who the technical advisor is on this movie, but whoever was the technical advisor on Crimson Tide had to have been a submariner. And it turns out that the technical advisor was the former commander of the USS Alabama. And I know I've been down this road before. I'm just going to say it one more time. It's appropriate here. I learned an awful lot about you can learn an awful lot about movies from watching Das Boot. And the scene with the Navy hymn where the boat submerges. The Navy hymn. I used to sing that in school when I was in Bermuda. We'd sing hymns every morning. We'd be in our little blazers and our ties and our school patches, and we'd sing hymns every morning before we went to school in the school. And every now and then we'd sing the Navy hymn. And the words are so powerful. Anyway, once the boat submerges, the reason it's interesting from a writing point of view, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's just very entertaining, but if you're interested in screenwriting, this is a very good example. When you watch Crimson Tide and they get down below, there's kind of conversation among the crew members and so on. That's more or less normal. But when they're going to have their missile drill, the language that they use is in fact, it is a foreign language. They're speaking in English, but the jargon is so thick that you really have no idea what they're talking about. On the 1MC, spin up tubes 12 through 24. What? And then all of the con, sonar, con, all of the thing, and then when they go to verify the message and they pull this thing out of the safe and it's inside this plastic container that has to be broken and it's got the verification codes for the launch on it, and they're walking through the Combat Information Center and the guy's got this thing over his head, and I'm watching this thing and why the hell is that guy carrying that thing over? Oh, he's carrying it over his head because this is the authentication codes out of the safe, and this means that if he was a spy of some kind, he wouldn't be able to switch them with something else. Here's the thing that we're going to need to start World War III, and we all know where it is at all times. And then the actual steps that they took to certify the message. And then, so the guy reads was it a 6-letter hexadecimal kind of thing? Tango, Golf, November, Tango, Alpha, Delta, and then the exec says Tango. Reese says the same numbers, and he says the message is authentic, and then the executive officer says, I concur, and then the captain says, I concur, and all of these safety steps. So don't go launching off nuclear missiles by accident. The reason it's interesting from a screenwriting point of view is that if it wasn't there, you wouldn't have missed it, but with it being there, it seems irreplaceable. It seems like the movie would suffer if it wasn't there. AK-47 for now wins the internet for today. Absolutely wins the internet for today by in the comments section announcing live that the actual launch codes from Crimson Tide, I'm going to have to take his word for this, was Bravo, Echo, Echo, Charlie, Alpha, Tango, Alpha. That wins the internet. Well done. Anyway, it's a great example of what the opposite of laziness is. This is an example of what care and research and dedication and work is as a writer. You you can you can get it right or you can get it easy, but if you go to the trouble to get it right, it shows. And they got it right on Crimson Tide. They got it right on Das Boot. And it's harder to get it right than it is to write some. All right, boys, let's see what let's light these candles. That's easy. You can just come out of your head of your bad writer's imagination. But if you're going to do it right, and you go to the trouble of learning this extremely arcane language of an actual launch sequence, if you're going to go to the research and the work and get it right, then even though the audience doesn't know what you're saying, and even though they wouldn't have missed it if you'd said, let's light these candles, the fact that it got right gives it the ring of truth, and that's what we're all looking for. There was one little thing of the story I forgot to tell, and then we're going home. After I read the book, The Taking of K-129, the author never got into what actually happened to K-129, and he didn't do it. He said, afterwards, he said he didn't do it because it's still under some debate and discussion, and he didn't want to commit to a story that wasn't true. But what looks like what happened, and this is really weird and scary. Again, it looks like a hydrogen explosion, but there's pretty good evidence from the sonar analysis that on K-129, the sail, which again many people call the conning tower, had 3 missiles in back of the part that goes up and down where where your crew goes in and out. So it had 3 vertical missiles in the sail, and it looks like they were doing a test of the missiles, which is not uncommon. That's the thing I just read you about in Crimson Tide. And it looks like from the recreation that one of the missiles ignited in the tube. That the missile didn't launch, but the rocket engine burned. And what they think happened to K-129 was that somehow or another this engine actually fired while the missile was in the tube. They're a couple hundred feet deep or whatever. And this missile lights inside the tube because it burned for 63 seconds or whatever the burn time is on that particular kind of missile. You could tell from the sound that the thing it didn't just explode, it just burned. And they theorized that what happened was when that first missile went off, within a matter of seconds, the exhaust plume from that missile had burned through the missile containment, the missile cylinder, and all of those exhaust gases, and thousands of degrees hot, went into the pressure hull and either killed or incapacitated the crew like that, which is why they found that sailor on his bunk reading a manual. It's just like, poof, this thing and burns through, and then the entire boat, they're either killed from concussion from the just the amount of air pressure in there, or the fumes or the heat or whatever. It's happened very, very fast. But the part that's really scary is that, without question, either killed or incapacitated the crew, and 60 seconds or 70 seconds after that, the second missile goes off in the tube. And then another exact same period of time occurs, 63 seconds or whatever, and then a third missile goes off and starts burning in the tube. And what they realized was that the Soviets had like a dead man switch, so that if the sub was sunk, it would still launch its missiles. Even on the way down to the bottom, it would still launch the missiles. That is kind of chilling, but what's more chilling is this apparently is true, and if it's true, then it's also true on their Typhoon boats, which are the biggest submarines in the world. I want to say 20 or 24 nuclear missiles forward of the sail. The thing's the size of a floating island. But I always thought, they call submarine combat, they call it hide and go seek with bazookas. It's like whoever shoots first wins, almost exclusively. If you shoot first, you win. That's why it's all about detection and evasion and so on. So I always thought, and most people always thought that if you were in a American hunter killer sub, you're in a Los Angeles class boat, a 688, or you're in a Virginia class boat or something, you're following a Typhoon, and she comes up to hovers at missile launch depth, and then you hear the doors opening, and she's getting ready to go. It's going to launch these missiles, take out your entire country. You put 2 torpedoes into that thing, and that's the end of that launch. However, what this was telling analysts from what they got out of K-129 was that given how big the Typhoon is, and given the amount of buffering space they put between the outer hull and the inner hull, I think it's got 2 pressure hulls as a matter of fact. Basically what they're saying is you could put 4 or 5 torpedoes into this thing, and it's not coming home, but it's going to launch its missiles. They're going to go. And that really, really shocked me quite a lot, because if you have ever done these sub-sims, you know it is. It's hide and seek with bazookas. Whoever gets that first torpedo off is almost certainly going to win, and whoever lands the first torpedo without question is going to win. And the idea that this Russian boomer could take 2, 3, 4 torpedo hits, on the way down, off they come. The only reason you launch those torpedoes is to stop the missile launch. And this kind of dead man switch on K-129, without question, something was activating these missiles long after the crew was dead. That's pretty spooky. Well, now, laddies, it's 8:37, so it's time for this boy to go home. Time to service. This is a fun edition of the Stratosphere Lounge, and thanks for indulging me with my little submarine thing. I like these topic shows. They're great. Maybe we'll do one with Cold War aircraft. I'm sure we will. If not next week, then sometime soon. Anyway, for those of you out there wondering where your firewalls are, now you know. Any one of these episodes, and there's 12 of them, is the equivalent of something like 6 or 7 firewalls worth of writing. So I apologize for that, but it's just kind of necessary, and I hope when the work finally comes out, which will be in about 2 weeks, you'll at least see where some of that time went, and hopefully it'll be worth your while. So anyway, that's it. Speaking of boats and all of this horror tales, if you want to join us out on the open ocean where all of these horrible things happen, you can certainly do that. We're going to be out there having a great time. And you can go to BillWhittleCruise.com for that, or on the web page, or on the Facebook page. But we are going to have ourselves a fine old time, and tickets are selling very, very well. So if you feel like I don't know any of these people, it's like, no, you do. You know all of them. You just haven't met them yet. Anyway, that's it. So this boy's going home, and I have to be in the chair here, in this chair. I have to be in the chair at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning for the Man Cow Show. But virtually everybody watching this episode, this will come to you too late because it'll come to you on YouTube, and I'm not going to upload that thing till I scrape the sound out of that. So I will have already been on the Man Cow Show by the time that you see this on YouTube. But in any event, if you're one of the few people watching live, one of the 57 of you, then I'll be on Man Cow tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. Pacific. So I got to go home and get to bed and come back here. All right, hooray! That'll do it for the Stratosphere Lounge, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, as always. Our tremendous thanks for all of your support over the years. And if you're not on the boat, then, it's, don't be a wiener. Get on the boat. All right. That'll do it. So thanks again for watching. It was a great show. We'll see you next time on the Stratosphere Lounge.